something that we were talking about in real time while it was happening was I felt like we were on an island alone when it came to a lot of people who just wanted to complain about the college football playoff as opposed to just being like, yeah, listen, it's got its flaws, but can we just enjoy what we got here? Well, apparently there's not going to be anything left to bitch about, right? Because the 12-team college football playoff is going to move to straight seeding. They'll have the straight seeding model this upcoming year. So no more automatic first-round buys for the 4 highest-rated conference champs. That means the top 4 teams in the selection committee's final rankings will get the first-round bye. I'm sure there's going to be no arguments or disagreements about any of that when the time comes. But nonetheless, at least we're going to get some straight seeding, unlike we had last year in the playoff.
Well, there you go.
This is what I find most interesting about this is there is such a contrast between the NFL conversation, their playoffs, and college football. So if you look at the conversation we had earlier this week with Pete Prisco about the NFL and potentially reseeding how they go about, determining who gets a home playoff game in the wild card round. Remember we talked about, hey, maybe we just get rid of divisions, and then that way you could actually have every single team in each conference play each other, and you'd actually be able to determine based on the regular season who has the best record, who should get the bye, who should get home field advantage, and you'd have your pecking order. But then that kind of throws out the idea of playing for something outside of just a Super Bowl or a conference championship once you get into the playoffs, right? You wouldn't be able to play for a division championship in the regular season. The arguments that we have to that is, well, it's a little unfair because if you look at, again, the NFC West this year plays the NFC South, the AFC South. All right. How many teams, like 5 teams between those two divisions, had 12 losses or something like that last year? And granted, it's a new year. We'll see what the divisions look like. But logic or common sense tells us that's going to be an easier schedule. Most likely for San Francisco, for example, I think was the example we were using. All right, now let's look at the college football playoff. And now instead of giving any weight to a conference championship, right? Like you play your 8 or 9 conference games and you go off and determine which 2 teams go to play for it. Instead of awarding them that, we're now saying, yeah, but even if you win your conference championship, you still might not be one of the top 4 teams. How does that make any sense? It's like at some point, the games on the field have to matter. And instead, we're now lobbying or throwing it out there to the College Football Playoff Committee and allowing them to say, well, this team didn't win their conference championship, but they look really good to us on the field and on paper. So we're going to put them as one of the top 4 seeds and they're going to get a bye. So there's all sorts of things that I think I have an issue with it. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, hold on a second. You're a Notre Dame guy. Like, how does Notre Dame factor into all this? And Notre Dame doesn't play for a conference championship. You're right. We don't. But that also was held against us. So we never could have a bye. And so now that the system works out where now Notre Dame they're not playing for a conference championship and they can have that bye now as part of this. So I know in a lot of people's minds, they were upset with the way things worked out last year and Boise State getting a bye and being one of those top 4 seeded teams. But that's why you play the games, and they earn their right to be in that position. I think after a year, it's a little too soon for me to make such a reaction like this. And I understand the argument that when you look at the Big 12, you look at the ACC, you don't look at them the same as the Big 10 and SEC. But I think there's other issues that we face in college football where we don't play the same amount of conference games during the course of the regular season. We don't force all the Power 4 teams to play more legitimate non-conference opponents. Like, let's get the scheduling right in the regular season to make them more comparable to one another, and then we can, after a few years, maybe look at the format and want to change it. Like, I don't like any of this, especially after 1 year of doing it.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you think some of this comes down to, because last year it was cut and dry. Hey, here are the requirements. If you do this, you get in. These teams get in, etc. For the most part. I mean, you still had to vote, and there were rankings and all that. Do you think part of this is college football looks at it and says, look, the debate is what is part of college football. Is so-and-so number 1? Or are they number 2? Like, that's always been a part of college football and always part of the sport. This opens that up more to where now there's no, hey, you're automatically in. we determine who the top 4 teams are. We're the ones who make the decisions. And now it just opens up further discussion and conversation and discord about who the best teams are and who's deserving of it. As opposed to last year where it was like, hey, so-and-so wins the Mountain West. They're in. Here's what we know. Moving. It just feels like this opens up the discussion for debate, which I don't think they hate from a college football standpoint.
I don't think that's the prerogative. Like, I don't agree with that at all. I think they're trying to get what they feel like is the top 12 teams, or 16 in the future if they expand, to go play for a national championship. And I think they're cognizant of the fact, like, and this is all put together by Disney and ESPN, they're cognizant of the fact that you need big brands. And this opens up the potential to having bigger brands as part of it. And it's one of the reasons why automatic qualifiers has been such a big topic of conversation for the Big Ten and the SEC. The conferences are so big now that if you're asking Southern Cal, for example, hey, why don't you guys want to play Notre Dame anymore? Well, now they've become a non-conference. They were always a non-conference opponent for us, but now they're just a non-conference opponent that every other year we have to travel more to have to go play them when we do travel, and we're already traveling more than it is, or more than we used to. So now that doesn't really fit within the model of what they're trying to do. That's their argument, at least. And I think that's part of the issue, is you're kind of hurting some of the history or the tradition of college football because of the changing landscape, and you're not incentivizing teams to play tougher schedules. Now, if they have an automatic qualifier, I think Southern Cal will be more apt to renew the rivalry. I think right now they don't want to renew it because they're fearful that if they have Notre Dame on their schedule every year and every other year they have to go to South Bend, that could keep them from making the college football playoff. They already are going to have to travel enough and play a tough enough Big Ten schedule. Then on top of that, having a non-conference opponent like Notre Dame as part of that, they're like, yeah, we're not really sure we want to sign up for this. And so you can understand it because they're just trying to look out for their own best interest. That's what they did in the first place going to the Big Ten. But the problem is now you've got a model where we're essentially saying these 13 people, they know better than what we're witnessing on the field. So you're almost incentivized teams to, if they lose a game, but not make the conference championship. So they get a bye there, and then they get the potential chance of either getting another bye if they looked apparently to be that good, or hosting a home playoff game. That's in essence like what this sets up for some of these teams, where they might be saying, hey, maybe it's not best to play for a conference championship in one additional game because we still might not be rewarded for it. Like, at least in the old system, you go win the conference championship, you're going to be probably ranked high enough to be that. And maybe that's some of the thought, too, is they feel like this will take care of itself. Like the 4 highest will be probably the 4 conference champions from the Power 4. But the caveat is now they've got the ability to put another team ahead of one of those, so you don't get a Boise or an Arizona State who gets a bye automatically just because they won their conference and where their rankings are.
Yeah, I just think it's so much conversation behind it, and it's so, in a lot of ways, I feel like there's a lot of complexities to it. Like if you it's just, I'm so conflicted because if you win your conference, that should be an accomplishment that is rewarded. Right. And that's what I can't seem to get away from. And it almost comes back to, does there need to be more of a focus on the value of what the conference championship represents? Like, how do you find, like, maybe those very issues that are being addressed going into how you seed the playoff teams should be addressed in how you're scheduling within the conference, and that weight of what the conference represents ultimately is respected and recognized by the governing bodies or the voters or whoever are the schedulers, whoever it is that's doing that. It's almost like you have to figure out a way to have that value pre-playoff. And I don't know how you do that.
The 5 highest ranked conference champs are still going to be in the 12-team playoff.
They're in. They're automatically in, but they don't necessarily get a bye.
Yeah, so I don't, it's like, okay, you're in, you didn't make it to the conference championship game, but because you have something about what you did in your schedule, you get a bye. but you didn't even play for your conference championship. It just seems counterproductive. It seems like it's a contradiction, and I feel like it doesn't do a justice and a service to what's going to eventually happen in the playoff, in my estimation. And it's really because, I mean, if you think about it, that exists this year. Like, you had a team that did not even qualify. Like, this is how a layman would see it. They weren't even good enough to make it to their conference championship game. They were knocked out by a team that did not even make it to the college football playoff within conference play. Not early, right. Not an early game, not a non-conference matchup. Within the conference, you lost a critical game that costed you the right to play and compete for the conference title, and yet you qualify for the playoff and you win the playoff. It to me, it just creates contradictions, which I get it. If you make it into the playoffs is an entirely different season. A team catches a hot streak that at the right time they're able to make it. Boom, boom, boom. But I just think that it creates an asterisk for what you're doing, especially if you were to say, okay, they're going to be the number one rated team coming into the playoff, and they didn't even play for a conference championship. But based upon X, Y, and Z factors, this is how we're going to rank and rate them going into the playoff. It just, I can't make sense of it. I have a hard time making sense of it. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't think anybody should get totally upset about it. I mean, there's worse things in the world. You could have an injured back. You could have some other things going on, some ailments. So just want to make sure.
Oh, we're done talking about this? I was going to keep going.
Dang.
Okay, I mean, listen,
I did hear the fingers.
I mean,
go keep going.
No, I'm just saying.
Close us out.
Well, my biggest issue is you're like, are we doing what's in the best interest of the players in the field? Like, I think about Clemson, I think about Arizona State, I think about, Boise. And, are you going to sit there and say to all those players and all those teams, you did everything we asked you to do, you won your conference championship, and yet now we're not going to reward them? And what kind of message does that send? Like, either make the conference championships matter or don't, and go back to a model where we don't play them, and then your conference games during the course of the regular season college football matter, and you can schedule a more difficult schedule. So then if you do lose one or two games, you still have the opportunity to get in. I mean, what you're speaking to is Ohio State. When you make that example, LaVar, and I know you didn't name them, but that's the team that ends up, playing a home, field first-round game against Tennessee. They get hot. They go on a run. They win a national championship. And yet they lost to Oregon. They lost to Michigan in one of the biggest upsets in the literally history of the game.
Yeah.
We've never seen anything like that, like on their home turf.
On their home field, yeah.
So that wasn't damning enough to hold them out. And we can all, argue about whether or not they should or shouldn't have. Clearly, when they played to their capabilities, they're the best team in the country last year. They proved that. And I think that's the concern for the committee. And this feels to me like they're giving themselves the flexibility to say, well, we have a team that we feel like can go win it all. Yeah, but maybe they didn't show it as much, especially late in the season. So we're going to find a way of getting them in. And plus, it's a bigger brand. I mean, Ohio State rates. It's the number one team in regards to ratings in the country. I mean, there's others that factor too. Notre Dame's a part of that. Michigan, Penn State does as well. There's obviously SEC schools. But the truth, Texas, the truth is, I feel like that's what this is more about. This is more about giving the College Football Playoff Committee the autonomy to be able to find a way of getting what they feel like is the more right group of teams to get to that bye, which I think based off last year and looking at how many teams were able to get on a roll and take advantage of the home playoff games, I don't know that some of those teams wouldn't want to play, a home playoff game and instead getting a bye and going to the next round. Some of them might want to play that extra game, especially if they don't have to play in a conference championship.
Yeah.
But again, that's just my opinion on it. Clearly I don't feel like Jonas wants to weigh on this. So
I like it. I like the fact
You
that
like
it's
what?
straight seeding, and you want to be rewarded. You win your conference championship, you get in. Good, fine. I think the NFL should do the same thing. I've said it all week, so I'm good with it.
Not that simple.
I mean,
But it
I was just
sounds
saying, like,
simple.
you're not
Not that
really,
simple.
You're not talking about whether or not they deserve a bye, though. Like automatic entry is one thing.
Arizona State was 16th last year and got a bye.
I think we did with Clemson.
No, Arizona State was 16th, and they got a bye because they won the Mountain West. Like
Arizona State played in the ACC, or a Big 12, I mean.
I'm sorry, in the Big 12, and they got a bye week because they were the highest-ranked team and they were 16th in the country. Like, why should they get a bye? This is like the Texans getting a bye or getting a home game, because they won the division. Like, I don't like it. I think the buys should go to the best teams in college football. I understand this gives them the autonomy, and they're going to want to focus on big brands because it rates and all that stuff. I totally get it, but I do think you're rewarding these schools still. They're going to get in. Maybe they're going to have to go on the road. Maybe they'll get a home game depending on where they are. But I like the fact that it's a straight up. And the 12 get in.
Understood. Just to correct you, it was Clemson. Clemson was the team that was 16th. I understand what you're saying, but they were the ones that had 3 losses. They won the ACC. They got in. That was the most controversial one because they were outside of the top 12. Arizona State sat at 12 in the final rankings, but they had won the Big 12, which is why they ended up getting the automatic berth and bye.
And so do you think Arizona State deserved a bye?
I do if they win their conference. Otherwise, like, why are we playing conference championship games?
And that therein lies the whole conversation. It's like a chase your tail type of scenario.
Okay, but if you win your conference, you get in. That's your reward. Why should you get a bye too?
No, because then otherwise we're just trying to throw up. Like, anyone could get in then.
Yeah,
it's whatever the committee thinks.
That's what you got to like. There's got to be a way to find clarity on this particular what we just stated 2 seconds ago. There has to be a way to find clarity on what that represents. There has to be. Like, that's the circle. That's the hamster wheel of what this is right now. It is.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you find the balance of value with the rankings and with the conferences.
So,
I don't know.
So if you play in an inferior conference and you win that conference championship, not only do you get in, you also get a week off. You get a bye week.
Again, I think it's just trying to figure out the value of it so that it doesn't come across that way. It's not fair to say that about Boise State. It's not fair to say that about Arizona State. It's not fair to say that about a team that these kids come out of high school, they transfer in the portal, they're all looking for the same exact thing, the opportunity to go get an education and play at a school where they can compete for a national title. At any given point in time, if that dream is not a real dream of reality, then that lessens and lowers the value of wanting to go to that school. So now that creates a disparity in talent going from school to school. You'll have the same 2 or 3, 4 schools that get the same type of players every year that win the same games and win the championship every year. Now, if you create some parity and teams do have the opportunity to have a great season and be rewarded for it, then now you might have players that are actually willing to go to other schools outside of the main ones. And so what does that look like? If we all came together and said we want to go to UNLV and make UNLV a powerhouse for the time that we're here, how is that rewarded if you go there and you're blowing teams out?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Jonas, to LaVar's point, if UNLV is a great example, right? Dan Mullen's taken over. They've got a bunch of money pumped into this team. It should be a talented team. They were in the hunt last year. If UNLV goes undefeated this year, are you going to say to those kids and the team, like, well, you played in a lesser conference, so you shouldn't get or be able to qualify for a bye if you end up being one of the highest ranked teams?
I mean, if they're ranked high enough, I trust the committee's going to make the right call. If they're ranked high enough,
that's what makes it different. And you're not wrong. I'm not judging you for thinking that way because you're not wrong for looking at it that way. But what's wrong about it is that they did what they were supposed to do. If they go undefeated, They did what they were supposed to do. So you're saying basically because this committee doesn't see the value in them going undefeated, which, by the way, being out of UNLV is probably more difficult in the conference that they're in.
Why is that?
To accomplish being undefeated.
Why, is there stuff to do
Well,
there?
because the resources aren't the same.
Look, I get it. And I understand that they should be rewarded, but I view getting into the playoff and having an opportunity to win the whole thing. You're one of the 12 teams in college football that have an opportunity to win it. You look on teams that were on the outside looking in: Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss last year. They would have taken. Hey, listen, we'll go on the road. We'll just get us an opportunity to be a part of this. And I do think you're rewarding them. I just don't think you should reward an inferior conference with a bye week just because they won that conference. Like, if
here's the problem: is I think if you push away the group of 5 teams, and you're going to say there's a clear separation between the Power 4 and Group of 5, which in the language we use alone, you already do that. So they just need to just flat out say it and say, look, Group of 5, you can be a part of it, but the reality is we don't ever feel like you're going to be able to have a bye. And that it's going to get to a point where it just keeps pushing us further and further down the road of creating a system that doesn't involve those schools. And that's unfortunate for those players in those schools because they're not going to be able to have a robust enough, Division I college football program if you're saying that to exactly what LaVar's saying.
And you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to legitimately say this is your national champ.
And by the way, what do you guys care? You guys are blue bloods. You're Notre Dame and Penn State. You're going to get in. What are you worried about the gum on your shoe with these other schools?
But that's the problem. Is it shouldn't be like that. You have to earn it. Yeah. You can't just say, well, they're a blue blood, they should be in. That was part of the issue with Alabama or Ole Miss or whoever last year. Was like, oh, well, they're an SEC team. They should just get in. It's like, okay, why are we playing the games then? Like, why does any of this matter? If we just want to say, hey, these are the top teams because of their resources or their blue bloods or, they rate, or we think on paper they should be, or on paper they make better matchups, like, well, what are we doing? Like, why do we play the games then? Or if we're not going to use those results as indicators for something?
Yeah, it's just qualifiers. Qualifiers is the problem here. You got to eliminate the qualifiers. Like, oh, they were good. Oh, they went undefeated, but... that's not.
It's a painful conversation, guys.